Well, good morning. We'd like to welcome you to our online gathering this morning. We know that we're all in different places, but today we're going to stand together because we know that our God is omnipresent. He is everywhere, and so we're going to worship him this morning from all of our different homes. So would you please join us and stand as we begin to sing this morning. And I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? And it was my tomb till I met you. And I was breathing but not alive. And all my failures I tried to hide. And it was my turn till I met you. You called my name, and I ran out of that day, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that day, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. Your great love, Jesus, when I'm in you called my name, and I ran out that day, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out that day, out of the darkness into your glorious day. See the side I needed rescue. My sin is sin, the chains break at the weight of your glory. Needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you called me, city, city again. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air I'm breathing. I have a future. but you have never failed me. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battles you have never failed me. Sing us out your promise. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. And I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. And I know that I won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise. Jesus, you're still within your. My heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. Never fail. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. Never fail. Sing this together. I've seen you move. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe. See you do it again. Made a way when there was no way. And I believe. See you do it again. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe. I'll see you do it again. Made a way when there was no way. And I believe. I'll see you do it again. I'll see you do it again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. voice of mercy. And I'm bought with money, wholeheartedly, my soul undeserved. You're so you're so you're so good. You're so good. you're so good. And God, you're so good. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good. You may be seated.
Well, I am guessing that many of you are happy as a clam to be home right now. What could be better than church service in your pajamas and with a good cup of coffee? But I guess that there's also some who are unhappy. You didn't enjoy online-only church back in March and April, and you're sure you won't enjoy it now. For those of you in the second group, I have some good news. The plan right now is for us to only do online-only services through next week. Sorry, those of you who are enjoying the pajamas. I won't say which group I belong to, but to the other group I say, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I really do. And I am just thankful for Seth and for his team that they have the know-how to make sure that we are able to live stream. And that the team came out, the sound guys, the camera guys, the worship team, so that we could do this together. So next time you see them or get a chance, be sure to thank them. So why are we doing this? Obviously, we're doing this because we're trying to stop the spread of the coronavirus. I don't mean that. Why are we having to do this? I thought we were past all this. Maybe you did too. I thought that we had finally gotten back to some semblance of normal. But when I think about normal, what does that even mean, right? Have you noticed that normal these days seems kind of crazy? Obviously, the last 6 months have been a wild ride, but like the last 4 years. Maybe I'm just more aware of it now, but it feels like things are increasingly tense and difficult. And to be honest, the last 10 to 12 years haven't been a picnic either. So this morning, I want to look at why things are so difficult right now and maybe figure out what's going on. I don't need to make the case that our country is in turmoil right now, but here are just a few reminders. Depending on who you listen to, either the pandemic is out of control or it's not all that bad and we're actually all overreacting. And these people are convinced that COVID-19 is a real and aggressive danger, that our only hope to combat this disease is for us all to stay home and to make sure that we only leave for essential activities. And when we do, we absolutely all must wear masks. While these people over here are suspicious about the conflicting information that we have, stuff that keeps coming from different places, and we're actually wondering if this isn't just people using panic as a cover for a power grab. And what's interesting is that these people and these people are both in our congregation. It doesn't really matter who you believe to see that that's kind of chaotic. Then there's the chaos that all erupted after George Floyd's death. Is this about police brutality, or is it about systemic racism? Or is it about a movement to overthrow the country? Some say that the majority of our country harbors racially bigoted views. And others say that no, there's only a small segment of the population that's racist, but they've been emboldened by the words of our president. And then there are others who say that this is all just a convenient lie and a political strategy. That what's really going on is that a tiny but loud, small group of people is using this racial tension to stir up political issues, to move it toward a political or social end. And my Facebook feed is awash with people vehemently defending each one of these positions. What's interesting is those people used to be friends. Those people used to be close. Those people used to go to church together. The unfriend and block buttons have become the most used feature on social media these days. And let's not forget that it's an election year, and we absolutely have to stop the other side from taking, or is it retaining, power. Because if they do, it will lead to the suppression of our rights and to the destruction of our way of life and the end of the world. In the public arena, it seems that there is no end to discord and difficulty. Then there's our personal lives. Is it just me, or do things seem to be getting more challenging day to day? How many of you are experiencing regular frustrations and roadblocks? Relatively small problems, but real stressors that keep cropping up. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Many of you know that my wife, Kara, has been in the hospital since last August, and with that comes a sizable number of challenges of its own. But then, as if on cue, both of our phones stopped receiving and started dropping calls. And then, as if on cue, the batteries and the chargers stopped working properly. And so Kara is in a hospital that won't allow visitors, and she's incommunicado because she needs a new phone. So I go to the store to find one. I do some research with some difficulty and find a phone that I think would work for us. It's great, but they don't have it in the store. I have to order it online, so it's going to be several more days before I get it. So several days later, I checked the website to see if it had delivered yet, and I found out, lo and behold, that the store had canceled the order without telling me. So it turns out that I contacted my bank. Turns out that they had suspected fraud, so they canceled the payment without telling me. I got it all worked out, and I had to order the phones again, which meant that it was going to be several more days before I could get the phone and get it to Kara. The whole while, she's isolated in a hospital, in a stressful situation, and not being able to communicate with people. It's not a big deal, but these sorts of things keep cropping up. They just seem to keep happening, and I bet you can tell stories like this as well. I'll bet you have these things that just keep to seem happening. These stories of heartache and headache, these frustrations and these hurts. You know, recently I've heard from people in our congregation stories of conflict with coworkers and neighbors, stories of broken down cars, and we all know the inconvenience of that. Stories of custody issues and failing health and financial woes. Everything from big struggles to minor irritants, difficulties that sap our strength and disrupt our peace and drive us to anxiety and dread. Even if you're one of those happy few who has managed to stay blissfully aware of the chaos, the rancor, and the division that's going on in the public sphere, you only have to look at the turmoil in your own life to get the feeling that things are getting out of hand. Now, I'm a root cause kind of guy. If something seems to be not the way it's supposed to be, I want to know why. I want to dig down to the foundation and find out what's really going on. So I want to know, where is all of this coming from? Why has our culture become so hostile and divisive of late? According to Pew Research, the political divide between the left and the right is widening significantly. Gallup polling indicates that fewer people every year think that race relations in our country are good. Our trust in the credibility of our elected officials and of the news media is lower than it's been in decades. So with all this tension and division, bitterness and conflict out there, and all of the hurt and pain and frustration in here, I want to know who's to blame. See, while Kara's been in the hospital, we've been through the ringer. That makes sense. But when things go wrong in a hospital, the natural impulse is to find someone to blame. Who screwed up? Who do we need to hold accountable for the mess we find ourselves in? And that's true in your life too. It's true on the job. It's true in your home. It's true in our country. And maybe you have some theories about why things are getting worse. Maybe you blame a particular politician or a political party. Maybe you blame a news organization or several. Maybe you blame a shadowy figure in the background exerting influence and funding causes. Maybe you blame the entertainment industry. Maybe you blame a foreign government or corporations or the wealthy elite or the university system. If that's the case, the real cause of all of our difficulties has managed to distract you and stay hidden. Charles Baudelaire is credited with saying, "The devil's best trick is to persuade you that he doesn't exist." And I'm sure you've heard it before, but I want to remind you of what Paul told the church in Ephesus. In Ephesians 6, it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Our true tormentor isn't our coworker, isn't our neighbor, isn't a political party. It's Satan himself. Now, our little corner of the kingdom has never been very comfortable with the reality of Satan. We like to talk about him. We admit he exists, but it's always in archaic biblical terms. We like to keep him over there and back then. We don't really expect to see him at work in our lives, but why not? Most of us would say that we believe that the Bible is trustworthy. So why do we have such a hard time believing that Satan would be at work right now, actively trying to harm us? Peter describes the devil as our enemy. In fact, the word Satan means adversary. In 1 Peter chapter 5, it says, your enemy. The devil prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. If we believe the Bible is trustworthy, we need to take the person and the influence of Satan seriously. Because Jesus did. In John chapter 10, Jesus refers to Satan as a thief who came to kill, steal, and destroy. And as I look around the world around us, if I look around the lives of the people that I know, at a culture that seems to have gone crazy, I have no trouble believing what Jesus said about our enemy. He is hard at work. He's always behind the scenes, but he is working. He's working to kill our relationship with God and with each other. He's looking to steal our peace and our hope and our joy and our love. And he's looking to destroy our credibility and our witness. When you read Facebook or watch the news, or when you face difficulties in your personal life, even minor ones, do you feel your hope and your peace being chipped away? Do you feel your patience being worn thin? Do you feel discouraged or weighed down or sapped of strength? If your life right now feels challenging, you need to ask yourself why. Who stands opposed to you? Do you sometimes feel like there's always one more thing to overcome? Like there's never enough good, that every good thing has a little bad mixed in. Where is that coming from? Who stands opposed to you? Now, I'm not saying we need to be fearful and we need to start looking for a demon under every rock. But if we believe Scripture is believable, if we believe it's trustworthy, we need to take the devil seriously. He is real and he is at work. He prompts people to say stupid and hurtful things online and in emails and in anonymous phone calls. He whispers in the ears of our well-meaning friends and family so that they advise us poorly and they cause more trouble. He stirs up discord and anger. He sows seeds of doubt and fear. He solidifies bitterness and resentment. And he does it the whole time in the shadows. He's not some opportunistic animal, just pouncing on whatever he sees. He's prowling around. He's hunting us. He's a schemer. He's got plans and strategies. In Matthew 13, it says that Jesus told them another parable, The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted up and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. Your enemy is working under the cover of darkness to bring chaos, to kill, steal, and to destroy, to devour. We need to wake up and start recognizing how he works. See, Satan has a lot of strategies, but his main weapon is deceit. Speaking to the Pharisees in John chapter 8, Jesus exposes Satan's primary tool. He says, "You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Why do you think that no one can seem to agree about what's going on with this pandemic? Why do we see so many people who identify as Christians eager to join causes and movements and campaigns that are opposed to the teachings of Christ? Why is there a constant he said, she said by news outlets and pundits? And why is the church, why is the bride of Christ divided? Our enemy has lied and schemed his way into our culture and into our lives. Tragically, he has used deception to distract us and get us fixated on trivia. What Tucker Carlson or Don Lemon said, what Trump or AOC tweeted. And if you don't think that's trivial stuff, let me ask you, in the grand plan of God for the souls of the people he loves, does the latest outrage matter? I ran across a verse that Paul wrote to the first century Corinthians, and he could have written it to the Americans of today. In chapter 11 of 2 Corinthians, he says, "But I am afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, your mind may somehow be led astray from your sincere and pure devotion to Christ." That's what Satan is doing to us. He's keeping us on our heels. He's just keeping us distracted from the work of the kingdom. He's destroying our peace. He's stealing our joy, and he's killing us by degrees. We see the difficulties we face in our daily lives and never realize that Satan is twisting us up into knots. We need to start recognizing the strategies of the enemy, and we need to start responding accordingly. So, how do we respond to the enemy? If lies are the main weapon of the enemy, then the truth has to be our defense. We need to do more than just say that we believe the Bible is trustworthy. We need to open it. We need to arm ourselves with the truth found in it, and we need to start living out what it teaches, not just in word, but in action. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 says, For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, our weapons, have divine power to demolish strongholds, the strongholds of deceit. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought and make it obedience to Christ. Truth is our best defense against the father of lies. And the truth in Scripture equips us to stand in complete joy and peace even as the storm swirls around us. Let's look again at 1 Peter chapter 5, and let's look at it in more context. Starting in verse 6, he says, Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Stand firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of suffering. One of the biggest lies that Satan tells is that we're alone, that no one understands or cares about our suffering. We get anxious trying to work through our pain and our difficulties on our own, when in fact, we have brothers around the world and right here in our city, in our backyard, that are going through the same thing. And we can draw strength from each other. And we can learn from the wisdom of those who have gone through it before us. But we have to be willing to be transparent in our trials. We need to be comfortable. We need to be comfortable about being open with one another. We need to be comfortable about admitting we cannot handle it on our own and that we need help. Guys, men, I'm talking to us. That takes humility. Notice that Peter points out that we aren't expected to stand up on our own. In fact, he instructs us to humble ourselves so that God can lift us up. And he will usually use those around us to do the lifting. Satan uses deception to get us worked up and worried about the future and the future of those we love. He lies to us and makes us anxious. But we can unload all of that anxiety onto God because he cares deeply for each of us. He loves your spouse more than you do. He loves your children more than you do. And you can trust him with their futures. We also need to be alert to the devil's schemes. He's hiding in the shadows, but he's also roaring. He's not silent. We can see him coming. If you start to train yourself to see what he's up to, you won't fall for the deception. You do that by pausing in the midst of whatever is causing you pain, whatever crisis or distraction or hurt. You pause and you consider whether or not it could be the work of your enemy. The good news is that resistance is powerful. We'll see how in a minute, but first we need to look at Ephesians 4. Starting in verse 25, it says, "Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." I said earlier that Satan will kill our relationship with God and with each other, that he will steal our peace, our joy, and our hope, and that he'll destroy our credibility and our witness. And I can't tell you how many times well-meaning Christians I have seen spread lies that they believed because they didn't guard themselves against the deception. They were fooled, and they were made to look like fools by sharing rumors that 30 seconds on Google would have refuted. It's usually motivated out of anger against some injustice or some outrage, and we're far too quick to believe it because we don't like the person that it's said about. In our anger, we sin by speaking the native language of our enemy, even if we don't mean to. And as a result, we give the devil a foothold. He digs his way deeper into our hearts, making us less aware of his influence. And we completely blow our witness to speak about the gospel of Jesus or about any truth because we have lost all credibility. Or, just as bad, we say true things in the most ugly and condescending way possible, never considering how our words will be received. Ephesians 4 says, "Then we will no longer be infants tossed back and forth by the waves, blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of men and their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into him who is the head, that is Christ." Satan has tricked us into being eager to talk about all manner of things that are completely irrelevant and unrelated to our God-ordained mission on the earth. Instead of being so eager to get worked up by every changing wind and wave, we need to be more focused on talking about the grace of God that is available through Jesus Christ. Colossians 4 said, "Be wise in the way you act toward outsiders, making the most of every opportunity. Let your conversations be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." And speaking of grace, we can resist the devil's schemes by remembering that grace is all we need. in Christ, we are complete. Satan will continue to work to undermine our hope and to make us miserable as everybody else. But God's grace is poured out on us, and it is sufficient. James chapter 4 says, "But he gives us more grace." That is why Scripture says, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Satan is real. He is powerful. He is working in the world, and he's good at his job. But we don't have to fall prey to his schemes and his strategies because Jesus has conquered. 1 John 4 says, "You, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world."
Lord, I confess, now in you I find rest. Without you, I fall apart, and you're the one that guides me. Sing this song, Lord, I need you. And Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. And every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Mercy runs deep, your grace is more. Grace is found is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Oh, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. And every hour I need you. My one this morning we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into our time of communion. And I know that being at home is weird, taking communion. This morning, we just want to encourage you to take what you have, whether that's water, bread, cracker, whatever you have around your house, you take that and use it as your communion. And this morning, we talked pretty heavily about our enemy and how we live in this broken and fallen world. The beauty of what Christ did for us, and the reason why we remember this time, is that he brought that world back to him. His sacrifice, his resurrection is to redeem his creation to him. And yet we still live in the consequences of our sin. But we know good well that this home for us is temporary. There's a home that is perfect, that Jesus has been working on since he left. It's made for us. And that's what this time is for us to remember. So we invite you now to take the next couple minutes and to commune. Whether you're by yourself with your family, just take this time to remember the sacrifice and the resurrection of Jesus.
Well, we want to thank you for being with us. If you would like to continue your worship through giving, we have an opportunity online for you to do that. Just go to whccfamily.com/give. And you can give. And again, as I say every week, no one is obliged, no one's obligated. We want you to do it out of the conviction of your heart and your connection with Christ. We have, obviously, to change some plans that we had. We are not going to have any activities for the church at all, whether in the building or other places where we gather together. That means life groups and classes. That means the quilters. That means everybody. So we want to make sure that everyone is safe. We want to make sure that everyone is getting through this thing okay. And so we're going to postpone all of our stuff until after August. The first time we will get back together, Lord willing, in this building is August the 2nd. So make plans accordingly. Also, we want to let you know that if you're going through anything at all that we can help you with, don't hesitate to ask. Be transparent with what your needs are, because we would love to meet with you, even if it's not face-to-face, even if it's a good social distance apart. We want to help. We're here to help. And I know this is a ridiculous, crazy thing we're all going through together. Please don't go through it on your own. Please call your friends and check in on them. Please call people you don't necessarily know and check in on them too. Take an opportunity to overcome what the world is throwing at us and really what Satan is throwing at us by being the church in this moment. And let's glorify God together. We hope you have a great week.